I'll call this this public hearing meeting to order. Today's October 27th, and it's 6:49. We're starting a couple minutes late to be polite for people that try to make it into our meeting. And this is a public hearing on the water rates. And immediately following, we'd ask if anybody had any comments on the sewer rates. We'll start with the water rates. Are there any members of the public here? I'm not seeing any. I saw a few earlier. Maybe not. So I don't see any members of public here. This was properly advertised and published. And then I would stop. There's no need for presentation, obviously, or anything like that. I'll ask if there's anybody here from the public. Seems moot to do this, but we'll check the box anyway. For the sewer rates, we published our sewer rates for the coming year, and this is a public hearing. If there's anybody, member of the public, would like to speak to the water or sewer rates, be heard.
Dave Murphy here. I make a motion that we, hearing no public to give any information on this, I make a motion that we close the hearing on the sewer rates, which was the first one listed.
Second, Steve.
Okay, Steve. Any comments?
I just have a question. Could there be people who don't want to comment but wanted to listen? I mean, should we have the presentation in case there are,
Nobody's here,
does
ma'am.
that mean there's nobody?
That's correct. There's nobody in the waiting room. There's nobody here.
Oh,
Okay. There's no, only we are present. If you open up your what do they call that? The participant button there, you'll see who's here. It looks like it's all us. So we have a motion, all in favor to close the water rate.
Sewer rates first. So sewer rates first, and then the immediately following the water rates.
I have it off.
Oh, you're right. It's the water rates. I'm sorry.
Water rates first.
No,
Sewer rates are first.
the sewer rates are first. Maybe the agenda doesn't look clear enough, but under the date, it says public hearing on sewer rates via Zoom, 6:45, and then water rate hearing to immediately follow the public hearing. Yeah, it's a little.
So Dave, what was your motion? What did we just close? Or what do you?
I made a motion to close the sewer rates.
Okay,
because
and that was seconded by Steve?
And that was seconded by Steve.
All right, and with some comment, we'll call that meeting with that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Looks like water rates are next then. Again, just before we take a motion, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the water rate? And I don't see any members of the public here, so I take a motion to close.
I make a motion that we close the water rates, hearing no public
Thanks,
that
Dave.
cares to speak.
Second, Steve.
That's Steve as a second. Any other comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Very good. Then we can open up our regular meeting, which immediately follows the public hearing, and we'll call this to order. There is a Pledge of Allegiance on our agenda. This commission still does that. So you may sit, you may stand, you may put your hand over your heart, and you can follow along. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anna Johnson has graciously agreed to sing God Bless America tonight. Who is that lady that used to sing all the time at the Yankees games? Who made it famous? God bless
Kate
America.
Smith,
Kate Smith, thank you.
long ago.
Long ago. Right, here comes Joe Mingo. And he's coming in. So, Anna, go ahead.
You are not funny, Mr. First Select.
Okay.
The justices rejected a GOP effort in Maine to suspend ranked choice voting and clear the way for election officials.
Hey, Joe, you got to turn your TV off
to the state's voters.
or mute yourself
For Election
because
Day, the justices are set to issue more
we're
rulings,
hearing nothing but
including whether the battleground states of Wisconsin and North
news.
Carolina can extend their deadlines for mail-in ballots. The legal wars are being fought while the court.
Okay,
What are you doing?
I know. I muted you, Joe. Let us know if you want to come back in to have a conversation. You got to turn your TV off, though. So approval of the minutes, regular meeting, September 22nd.
So moved. Steve?
Steve?
Carol Russell, I'll second that.
Carol, second. Any further comment?
I got one correction.
Thank you.
It's item number 9 regarding the test well for well 5. It says we're going to have 550,000 something, but
Hello?
Whoa, can you hear me?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, so I'm sorry, number 9, did you say, page 9?
Yeah, item number 9 on page 3 regarding the test wells for replacement well number 5. The first line uses 550,000 something, and it doesn't have it. I think it's meant to say 550 gallons per minute, GPM.
Yeah, that's correct. I see that.
Okay.
One minor correction, would it be okay of the?
It's just a typo.
The typo, we'll add that back in. Steve, I think you made the motion. Would you amend that motion?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, who was the seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Carol,
Carol
you
Russell.
seconded. Thank you. Thank you for seconding the
Mark,
amended motion. Yeah.
on number 8, it said that I recommended the public hearing to be on October 22nd. It was the 27th. Today's the 27th.
Okay. Details.
I just don't want them to think that they showed up on the 22nd.
Yes, indeed. So we'll amend that as well. Steve and Carol, I get your permission to do that.
So amended.
Okay, so
It also, that same mistake occurs,
yeah, the next line.
October 22nd is referenced in the second paragraph of 8 also.
Yeah.
I think the 2 and the 7 were just very close together.
Or they're 5 days apart, but however you look at it. Any other corrections? So we have a motion to approve on the table with, as amended, a couple of dates and some clarification on the number 9. Is there any other questions? I'll call the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Thank you all. Oh, delegations. How wonderful. Anybody from the public? Here we go again. Anybody from the public would like to speak to the Water and Sewer Commission? I don't think there are any members of the public here tonight. A couple people tried to get in, but again, I don't think they were here for that purpose. We'll consider the adoption of the proposed water, here we go, the proposed sewer rates. We had a public hearing tonight. We've discussed them in open meeting form in the previously. Is there a discussion or a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the sewer rates as recommended and presented by staff. I believe it's a 3% increase, right, Joe?
Correct.
Pardon?
I have the rate sheet if you guys want me to share the screen, or, but pretty much it was across the board, 3% increase on the usage. I bumped up the application fee for permits by $5, $10 or something like that. And the inspection services, which we have very little, got bumped up as well. So.
Great. Any other questions? We have a motion on the table from David. Anybody?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Steve?
Hello?
Yes?
I'd like to add some money to hire a painting consultant to paint the Boston Post Road Bridge, tank.
In the rates, I don't know how you add that money. I mean, we could jack up the rates, but we're not talking about the budget right now.
These are the rates, not the budget. There's a difference.
Joe, I do have a plan that I was going to propose for that, but obviously it's the commission's choice if you want to increase the rates to pay for that. But I think there's a means to accomplish what you're looking for without, and we're talking about the sewer rates. I think you were just asking about the water tank. We're talking about the sewer rates right now.
I apologize.
Okay. So we have a motion and it's been seconded. Any other comments? Let's stay with this. All in favor of the sewer rate proposal, say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstaining? The ayes have it. Consider the adoption of the proposed water rates.
Make a motion that we approve the proposed new water rates as presented by staff. It's 2% across the board, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, plus some increases in fees.
I'll second that, Steve.
Motion and seconded. We are on water now. Mr. Mingo, you suggested we added money in to paint the water tower over on Boston Post Road, the water tank. Joe, do you want to respond to that? Or is there another way we can do that without jacking the fees up?
I'll wait to hear what Mr. McGaw has to say later on in the meeting.
Yeah, I think we have an opportunity in our operating budget to accomplish that. I already talked to Mr. Mingo about that. But as we're presenting now, we're talking about the rates. So, I mean, if the commission so wants to, bump up, we did make the water rates are a little more sensitive than the sewer rates, is the fact that not only in front of this commission, but in front of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, they wanted a 10-year analysis of when we were going for financing for the well 1A and well 1A and well 6 $5.5 million project, and also the meter replacement project. So I kind of made a commitment that we're going to try to keep the rates to around 2% increase, and that's what we're continuing to do. And so right across the board is the 2%. I did increase the fire hydrant, the private hydrant fees from $215 to $225. The sprinkler charges from $215 to $225, and also the service connection. They've always been, for the last bunch of years, $2,500. What we're finding a lot of times, and what we want to do, is start putting locks on after we put the services in, because what we find is we put the service in, and then the contractor working on the house before we even put a meter in there, just turn on the water, because they have the key to do it. So we'd rather kind of lock our service once we put a service in, so that they can't just take water, and jacking up the service connection from 2,500 to 300 would pay for the lock and just some other stuff to make sure the cost of these materials is going up. The cost of pavement treatment is going up. So I thought that was totally justified.
Any other comments? Call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it unanimously. We'll approve the bills on attachment B.
Yeah, I'll move approval of, this is Steve, I'll move approval of bills 1A and B for tie and bond for well 1A and 6 treatment project. That's $28,208.58 and $40,487.61.
Second that.
There's a motion for the first two bills being presented tonight. It's been seconded. Is there any comment, questions?
I had a question.
Yes, Steve?
The invoice dates are 15 days apart, if I'm reading this correctly. What, is that normal, or I thought it was once a month?
For time bond?
Yeah.
They didn't bill us last month. They had a problem with their billing software. So that's September's bill and October's bill.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Question, good catch there, Steve. Any other comments, questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? There's one more invoice to adopt.
Yeah, I move approval of Bill 1C for RH White for well 1A and 6 for $109,281.37.
Second.
Seconded by Dave Zoller. Are there any questions or concerns? Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay.
I abstain.
Mr.
David
Bond.
Bond abstains.
You got it. Mr. Bond abstains. There you go. Thank you for that. We've come now to the well, the highlight of every Water and Sewer Commission meeting is well, Anna Johnson.
So your reports were included in your packages. I will point out that we've talked at previous meetings that the billing prisons on the water side, there's been an issue with the meter. And so as I understand it, the staff are working on resolving that. And until such time that it's resolved, the bills will not be going out for water. So the the receipts are down until until that gets resolved. The cash balances in water and sewer operations are starting to go down, but as I understand it, the bills went out today, so we'll start building those balances up again. On the water side, during the month of September, some roadway patching, roll-off container, emergency pump service at the orchards, and work on well 5 were performed in addition to the normal chemical and electricity expenditures that occur. And then again, the sewer assessment balance cash keeps growing, so that's a good thing. So we'll have some resources available when some infrastructure improvements need to occur at some point in the future. Those are the only two comments that I have to make this evening. If anyone has any questions.
I have a question, Carol Russell.
Mm-hmm.
On the meter problem with the prisons, is that connected at all with the meter replacements that were started, or is that still an old meter, or and I'm not sure if you're the right one to answer, Anna, or if that's a Brad or Ben.
Staff
Well,
can answer that.
Yeah, no, those are large, meters owned by Department of Corrections. They're 6 and 8 inch meters, very old. They have proposals into us, and we've approved them for change out and upgrade of those meters to match what our specs are now for meter installation. So that's all in process. They're moving forward with that, and in conjunction with that, we are going back and we have a little bit more homework to do as far as figuring out what historical usage we should apply to billings that we're not capturing at this point. We're putting that together, comparing sewer flows to water flows, and it's actually become a little bit of a cumbersome process. But when we complete that, we then want to sit down with DOC and review it with them. They are aware that they have not received the bill recently, but do know that something is coming because they've been in contact with Tanya in the billing office. So we're trying to work to a resolution on this, all culminating with the replacement of the meters in the well, I say near term. I would like to think that this is going to happen by the end of the year as far as the meter replacement part goes.
So what's the period of time that we haven't been able to bill? Like how many months are we roughly?
Anna, can you tell from your spreadsheet there, I want to say 3 or 4 months?
Well, actually, the last few months, the billings have been, 12, 15,000, which is really
Oh.
low. And so the issue of the problem has been noted, but we've still continued to bill them. But for the month of September, we did not bill them.
No doubt about, Carol, there is something going on at the prison. I mean, I think we had talked about in the report that due to COVID in March, the prison populations dropped from like 900 or 1,000 down to about 550. And also because the courts aren't working, that's why a lot of people, so there is an element of lesser flow, and that's why we've had a hard time getting our hands around this. But we are working with staff, we're working with DOC staff, and we're trying to get this billing corrected. And we're also keeping mindful of the cash flow. The water department, the cash flow was fine. It just, you'll see in the next item coming up, the sewer flows are also down, and that became a little bit of a cash flow issue, which we'll get to in the next item.
Thanks, Joe.
Any other questions? Thank you, Anna, for that report. Appreciate it. The request for transfer from sewer assessment to sewer operations for cash flow regions. This is a discussion and possible action item. Joe, my guess is this is something that's in your ballpark.
I was just segueing into that even though on water side we had a lot more cash, sewer, I mean, with both budgets, it is difficult with it. We have to get away from this billing twice a year because it goes like we're flushing cash and we have no cash, flushing cash, no cash. So, October is always a difficult month with the bills going out now. So on the sewer side, the last 2 years, I think we went back with Anna, at least definitely last year. I think it's the last 2 years. We've asked the commission in the September meeting to borrow $100,000 to move it into cash, because the other big expense in the sewer budget is, we get that infamous New London treatment bill, and it all depends on when the date of the bill is. And we got the bill this year on September 10th. We have 45 days to pay it. We're right in the middle of a tri-town agreement. The last thing we need to do is not pay our bill on time, and it was due October 24th. So I handed them a $350,000 check on October 24th, so that we had to move $100,000 to cover that check, because $350,000 at this time of year is really difficult. So this request is to, I guess, ask for forgiveness. In talking with the Director of Finance, we did move $150,000. I'd like to move another $50,000, and we'll pay it back in sometime in early mid-December. So I have a motion in your package to move, which if one of you guys can read, but move to approve the transfer of $200,000 from Sewer Assessment Fund 3 to Sewer Operations Fund 6 to cover October and November sewer operating expenditures. Sewer Operations will return the funds to Sewer Assessment for the end of 2020 calendar year.
So moved.
I'll second that. Carol Russell.
Mrs. Zeller, Mrs. Russell, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
In your memo, Joe, you say the bill was $349,000. And then you go on to say, which is more than I had expected. Was there a reason it was more, or?
It's really always hard to figure out what the bill's going to be, because we never know what they're going to say as far as for operating expenses. And we also, what happens always in June and July is we give them an amount of flow. We're trying to correct this on the Tri-Town agreement. I guess the best way to say it is we tell them our flow. Last year our flow was 330 million. So we told them ours was 330 million this coming up year. I have no idea what New London's flows put in, and I have no idea what Waterford is going to put in for their flows. So I don't know what their flows are going to be, and I don't know what the expense is going to be for the treatment plant. So I was expecting it was going to be the bill was going to be about 300, 310, and it was 350. I mean, I have it covered. I'm figuring that out so we can make sure we stay on budget. But that's why I made that comment is we're trying to correct that on the Tri-Town agreement, the new 30-year agreement, or however long it's going to be, because the billing is always a mystery, and you never want to open the bill because you have no idea what it's going to be. And I hope that answers your question.
It answers it. It's just not a good answer.
I have a question regarding that. the treatment plant billing. How frequently do they bill, Joe?
They build twice a year.
I see.
Would the problem be resolved if as part of the new agreement, if we had more frequent billing?
Well, one of the things is we're going to try to go to quarterly billing, and all 3 communities are on board with that. It will help everyone's cash flow. Actually, more so with New London, because they're the ones that are kind of funding the operation for 6 months. So quarterly billing would help.
We're working toward that
Thank you.
and working toward a better calculation so it doesn't become such an ordeal. It should be done with much simpler terms, and all the smart people at the table are figuring that out. So,
Dave, just really quick,
Yeah.
with the proposals that we're throwing around or talking with New London and Waterford now, I'm going to I propose a better way to do the billing so that we don't have all these uncertainties that you say isn't a good answer, because I agree with you, but it is what it is. And we're trying to make that bill a lot more predictable going forward, and there's a way to do it. And I've already proposed it, and the other towns have kind of are on board with that.
Terrific. Joe, you can segue right to the update on year-to-date water and sewer operating budgets.
Yeah.
But we
We didn't vote.
Oh, do we
gotta
not?
vote.
Vote on that motion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you got to vote on the transfer.
Okay. Are there any other questions on that? Let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 No early voting. Any opposed? Any abstain? No voting by
Put a
mail.
motion on the floor?
There was a motion on the floor, I believe, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Dave Zoller and,
and I seconded it.
Okay. Now we can segue, Joe?
Yeah. Can I share a screen? Do you have to give me
Yeah,
permission?
I think you can just do it. I don't think it's host only. Let me check. No, it's all participants can share a screen one at a time. So it's up to you. Yes. Do you know how to do it?
I do it. I'm just trying to find my thing that I'm trying to share. Trying to find. It's harder with a laptop. So
That's all I know.
I'm not. It's fine. Wait. I'm trying to get out of this. All right. I can't seem to find how to do that. But anyways, so I will give you guys a report. I know I give you that sheet usually that has all the line items, and there's probably way too many numbers on it, so it probably wouldn't even help to see it on the screen. Let me just kind of give a few. I'm first going to talk about sewer, and then I'll quickly talk about water. Sewer, as Dave Jocks had asked the question, but I am tracking that it's going to be about 90,000, 92,000 more than I had budgeted. But I also am carrying a line item for $80,000 that the sewer department pays the water for the meter replacement project, which we're not going to need to make a payment on the water side. So those two are kind of offsetting. I also carried higher than predicted benefit cost numbers, which is a good thing, as far as sometimes the numbers for the benefits come less than what you expect them. So sewer side, the increased bill from the London's, it should be covered, but I'm just putting the commission on notice, or at least letting them know. There's two line items in general with a lot of stuff that went on with the storm in August and just the age of the infrastructure. We haven't moved forward with the Niantic Patagonic major pump rehab. Is that we've been getting a lot more 10,000 for this, 8,000 for that, 12,000 for that expenses. And they have to be done. Ben or Brad will come up to me and say, hey, we need to do this. How much is it? $12,000. Did you get 3 prices? Yeah. And so those are adding up. The maintenance of pump station equipment, which is a $60,000 line item, is at, we've spent $53,000 and we're 4 months in. So we have $7,000 left. Maintenance of systems, a $24,000 line item. We've spent and encumbered 80% of that money. So we're kind of, right now, and a little later in the meeting, Ben's going to give you guys some things that we're going to propose to try to offset into sewer assessment, because they are, I mean, if you're spending $10,000-$12,000 on a capital item that's going to be there for 20 years, it's really hard to run it through the operating budget. So I like to always give you nice rosy information. And also on the sewer side, let's remember that we propose a 0% increase this year in sewer. That already with the storms and everything, it's going to be a difficult year to navigate our way to the finish line. And so long as I give you a heads up in April, in now, instead of telling you in April, holy crap, we're in a tough shape, then at least you guys will know. I'll try to keep you guys updated as we go. But it would be helpful if the commission supported our proposal later in the meeting to move some of the operating expenses to sewer assessment that are actual for equipment that is going into pump stations that we easily could be considered sewer assessment. So that's on the water side. On the sewer, the sewer side. On the water side, we didn't have as many issues with the storms. I say it, or whatever the name of that storm was in August, but we've had a lot of issues with our wells, and just the same, from an age factor, things breaking down on the water side. So we're going to be a little bit in the same predicament on the water side. It's going to be a little bit of a challenging year. But one of the things that, two things, it looks like I carried the money for the financing for the well 1A6, like we were going to make a full payment this year. And I wasn't aware of this, and this is something that Anna Johnson's telling me now, but our first payment for that's not going to be till July or August, which is not this fiscal year. So between that and the meter replacement project, Anna told me the other day that the agreement ends in March and we have 6 months to make our first payment. So not only the meter replacement project, but also the well 1A and 6, we're not making a payment that actually was put into this budget. The total of those payments is around 300 grand, which ironically, Joe Mingo, is about the amount that I'm being told by Brad is the amount that it costs to probably paint the Boston Post Road tank. That's completely coincidental. It might be closer to $250,000. So one of the things I suggest, or at least let the commission know about at this point, only 4 months into the year, is that we did carry over, this commission voted to carry over $30,000 last year in the capital project. That's going to be for doing the water quality of that tank and getting a robot in there and cleaning the inside of the tank. But we're going to be having Bill Shear work with Brad and Ben to put together a project to go out to bid this winter and get pricing on painting that tank. And we're of the opinion that it's going to be somewhere between 200 and 300. And if we can get the prices, then if we would come back to the commission and we have this $300,000 in the budget and operating, that maybe we can get that tank painted next year and be done with it, because it is an eyesore. It is an issue. I'd rather not have to bond it or put it into capital or anything like that if we have the money available to us because of these payments that don't have to come due this fiscal year. So I'll open it to questions, but from the water side, that is the solution that I'm recommending, Joe, to take care of the tank.
You say painting, Brad, or Joe, does that include inside and out? Recoating interior?
Brad, can you comment on the what your intention was?
Not the interior, just the exterior.
You're going to have the interior inspected? Because
it has been.
Okay.
Within the last 3.
So.
Yeah, no, it passed, and it's okay. There's some slight little delamination on the inside in an area. When we send the robotics in there to clean the tank, we can take another look at that. But the report indicated that the inside was still had very much useful life left and not warranted for internal painting at this point. So, but we'll need to keep an eye on that.
When was that report, Fred?
I want to say that was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. What's the normal span to?
Every 10 years, you need by compliance DPH, you need to inspect your tanks every 10 years.
Brad, how old is that tank?
Well, I want to. geez, I want to say it's the year 2000, maybe.
Okay.
If not, no. Good question, Steve. Off the top of my head, it's probably older than that.
Okay, just trying to get an order of magnitude on how long it's been out there.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're throwing, so just so I'm clear, the 30,000 that we carried over from last year, we're going to move forward with the cleaning the interior tank and doing that inspection, and that's going to hopefully happen in the next few months before as we get into the winter. And then if we put together this package, we'll know better about what the costs are and what we're up against of the painting of the outside of the tank, and then we'd obviously come back to the commission and see if that was what you guys would like to do. And at that point, we'll have a better idea of if those monies are come to fruition as far as being available in the operating budget.
You know that tank was painted 10 years ago. The exterior was painted about 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I talked to a painting inspector today, and he says that paint should last 25 years if it's done properly with maintenance.
Okay.
Another thing that staff brought up today is looking at some of the trees around the tank and seeing if we can trim some of them so that there's not some of the if without gets good sunlight, that's where it can get all the mold or whatever the heck is growing on the thing.
Are you looking for a motion here, Joe?
No, I'm looking for I'm updating the commission, letting them know what's going on, preparing them for where we're heading. But but Joe Mingo did bring up earlier about raising the rates for the water, and I was trying to show you guys a path of how we could accomplish it without raising the rates and pay for it out of the budget.
I have a question. Could you just review, you mentioned something in terms of discussions at the Board of Selectmen meeting regarding could you just highlight what the concerns were at the last meeting, the Board of Selectmen meeting regarding water and sewer budget? There was some discussion.
I mean, I went over the budget. They were actually very impressed with what we were doing. I mean, when we go to them and say we have a 0% sewer budget and a 2% water budget, I didn't hear any comments from them. Mrs. Hardy did mention the Boston Post Road tank, and she did ask a question about sodium in the water, but that's something we want to sit down with the Board of Ed about their salting of the Board of Ed properties near our wells. But besides that, there really wasn't any questions the Board of Selectmen had, unless, Mark, you remember. I don't remember.
I can't. Questions. Yeah, you just went over the budget. I'm not sure what Carol's referring to.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to indicate that I absolutely knew that. I just wondered if they had raised any problems. I wasn't saying that they had. I was just questioning how that discussion went.
That discussion went very well, and Mrs. Hardy, as thorough as Mrs. Hardy, when I had her in class, and she's been doing this for all the years, she had lots of questions for me, but nothing that couldn't be answered, and everything was reasonable. Nothing alarming. It was actually very good, and I think Mrs. Hardy was the only one that had any questions.
And you mentioned something about a 10-year. I'm sorry.
I think what Carol's talking about, you said that there were some questions about some financial replacements of well 1 and 6A, and how we're going to, we're talking about putting together the budget.
Dave, that was not the meeting the other day. That was when we were going for the funding for well 1A and 6, because we were going for the full faith and credit of the town of East Lyme. Not only did this commission have to approve it, but the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance had to it. So I gave them the same presentation of the 10-year analysis on the water budget to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And the Board of Finance, as you would only guess, because that's their numbers board, was very, asking a lot of questions. But this was last winter. I'd say this is 10, 11 months ago. And I made the commitment that we were going to try to, based on the debt reserve that we created last year, because we carried over $400,000 from last year's budget and put it in a debt reserve, so that we were trying to stabilize the rates for our ratepayers. And obviously the Board of Finance that's not a board, and that's not a budget they oversee, but they were happy to hear that we were trying to stabilize the rates for the ratepayers.
And that was the general sentiment.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is an appropriation looking for possible action, the appropriation of sewer assessment funds for upgrades at the Route 156 sewer pump station.
Yeah, so I can speak to that.
Thank you.
And I'll jump on Joe's coattails a little bit when he was alluding to some of the issues that we've seen on the sewer side, all kind of stemming from the storm. You know, it brought us into upgrading the controls over at 156, and you know, really going over the whole pumping system there with a fine-tooth comb, so to speak. And one of the issues that we realized was that you know, we want to rebuild one of the pumps. We realized one of the check valves seems to be leaking by a little bit. Now that's an older pump station that doesn't have a flow meter, so it's really difficult to kind of tell that that's happening. But looking at, you know, when we were pumping in bypass versus when we were running the station back under its own power again, we noticed that was an issue. So we looked at isolating the station so that we could replace these check valves. To give you a little bit of background about this type of station, it's a can station where you have two large pumps that are in probably a 5 to 6 foot radius, about 25 feet in the ground. So to accomplish isolation of the pumps, they used what's called a three-way valve. And that isolates both pumps. The Zurich makes it's a specialty piece. And when we went to start isolating and looking at doing the other repair work, we realized that the Zurich valve is not holding. These stations were also not built with gate valves outside the station. So this kind of created this whole domino effect where we realized just to go after doing some pump servicing, we were going to have to put an insertion valve outside the station to be able to isolate it and do the work that we needed to do while staying on bypass. And that I'm going to share the screen with you. Well, hopefully that works. I have it pulled up right now. So you can see that that was the first line item. Jack Farley installed a insertion valve outside the station. It was about $15,000. And then to actually go after replacement of the Zurich valve is another approximately $10,000. And then to finally go after the check valves that kind of started the whole process, we're estimating it to be about $7,500. So line 2 and 3 we haven't spent money on yet, but the line item 1 was just performed, I want to say a few weeks ago now. So that's all set. It's buried. The landscaping's been restored and that sort of thing. So we're all set there. Just trying to figure out how I get back to here now. So that kind of spells out what we're looking to pull out of the Sewer Assessment Fund 3. It's about $32,000. But obviously, if these estimates are a little bit high, it could be a little bit less than that. So that's kind of the project that we're looking at. Again, it was something that, you know, unfortunately is not something that you need to do every year. It's something that, like Joe said, you're going to need to do every 30 years. And for this station, it's time to do that.
Any questions for Ben?
I have a question. Does he need some action on part of the commission?
Yeah, we'd like to make a motion to transfer funds from Sewer Assessment Fund 3 into sewer operating.
Just for that specific amount?
Sewer assessment fund, sewer
Amount, right, Ben?
fund 6.
What's that, Joe?
For that amount, right?
Yes, for that amount, yes. If it's less than that amount, then obviously we won't need to take the full amount. But as I envision it, as we get these POs in, we'll be transferring that money in.
Don't we want to have a buffer of some sort?
These are estimates that have some buffer in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I make a
Yes,
motion that we,
Wait, wait,
Oh,
wait.
Anna.
transfer
Anna.
sewer
Yeah,
assessment.
may I suggest that we just approve making the expenditures from the sewer assessment fund for these items for, like, let's say up to 33,000, just make it like an even amount?
Would that cover the first line that we've already spent out of operating?
We'll reclassify the expenditure after this is approved.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking for a transfer up to $33,000.
No,
Right,
I
the sewer
think-
assessment
I
fund.
think the finance director said she wanted a motion to pay these 3 bills out of the sewer assessment fund, these repairs out of the sewer assessment fund rather than paying them out of the general operating. Is that correct, Anna?
Yes, can we just like say transfer up to $33,000 into a budget account to be titled improvements to Route 156 pump station? And that'll take care of it?
I make a motion that we transfer funds from the sewer assessment fund 3 into a line item of the budget for improvements to the Route 156 pump station in the amount of $33,000.
I'll second that, Steve.
Very fine, David Murphy, and thank you, Steve. Motion and second. Any further comments? Very thorough. Thank you, Dave, Ben. Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? A request for payment arrangement for the 256 Flanders Road project.
This is an easy one, but just a 30-second version of it. There, we try to go and get payment for bills that are late. This property, I think it's a Stars Inn Hotel, owes like $32,000, and they were asking staff to make a payment arrangement. In the past, they didn't follow the payment arrangement, so I told the owner that they're going to have to come to the commission and ask, because staff is not going to authorize that. He never got back to me, so you can, I guess, move on to the next item, because he's obviously not here to make that request.
Okay. How much is he owe?
$32,000.
Okay.
That's well beyond what staff is going to be doing any kind of payment arrangement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we should shut his water off.
That is quite a bit of money. How do you move forward in getting that from him?
Lien on it, and what we can work with attorneys or whatever, but
The lien on the property.
there's definitely a lien on it.
I have a
So we're
question
working.
about that. Isn't that hotel going to be bought out for the proposed intersection work?
That's my understanding. That's why there's a lien on it.
That could make this thing pretty complicated, huh?
Could. I think he just figured staff was just going to give him some, nice payment arrangement, and we're just not going to do that. I mean, that's something either the chairman or the commission has to approve. But we'll continue to try to go after and trying to get this paid, but I'm not signing off on a payment arrangement. That's not something that the commissioner or the chairman signs off on.
Thank you. POCD update. East Lyme is redoing its plan of conservation and development. I believe it's almost finished. Is someone giving us an update? Someone from staff?
Yeah, I can provide an update on that. In the commission's packet, there is a document, Chapter 13, Water and Wastewater Management. And in that, I have made the changes, and you will see them in track changes. So they're colored, highlighted in red. And these are the comments. And there were not that many from the commission, but I took what I had received and I incorporated them into into this, what I would now call a final draft that we need to pass on to Director of Planning, Gary Gaishel, because I think, as the chairman alluded to, it's coming close to needing this information, I think early first week in November, actually, as they begin to finalize the process.
Correct, next week.
Next week, yeah. So So the changes that have been identified by those of you are incorporated in this. And I also made some markups to the mapping and did review the mapping with Gary Gaishel. I know Mr. Zoller had some questions about the mapping, and if you look at your packet, although when I copied it, some of my comments got chopped off at the top there, but if you will, if you don't mind referring to that, if you have it in front of you, and I copied these in color so you could see them a little bit better, but one of the maps is the natural resource map, which identifies the drainage basins and the stratified drift aquifers in the town of East Lyme. It's called the existing water supply resources. The thing is, it does show in a general sense where the water supply wells are. I am suggesting, and after talking to Gary, because it does sort of coincide with the strategy they're trying to put forth in the POCD relative to groundwater protection and all of that, that it is actually beneficial to have a map that does show the stratified drift and also does show where our wells are. So it gives someone from the 30,000 foot view looking at it, what are the areas that we are generally trying to protect without being too specific about location. So that's my comment, that we keep that map in. The other one is the meter. This is a map I actually had never seen, but it's a meter distribution map. And again, it's on the next page. It's in color version. You'll see basically our water distribution layout for the town, sort of geographically, without actually showing specifically where our water mains are, where our storage tanks are, where our pump stations are. But it does just generally provide sort of the distribution of our customer base within the town of East Lyme borders. So I guess I'm making the pitch that this is generally a useful map in that it kind of shows from a geographical point of view the distribution of our system without being too specific. So I don't think it has any harm by keeping that in there. And then there were three other maps that I think Mr. Zoller had brought this point up, that they appeared redundant. And look, speaking with Gary, he agrees. There are three maps here, and we generally want to keep the first map. Statutorily, for the POCD, the POCD does need to identify basically your sewer service area. This is the sewer shed map now that I'm referring to. So it does statutorily need to identify the sewer shed area, and it needs to identify what areas would not be sewered. And by looking at the sewer shed line, I guess he's satisfied with the fact that anything outside of that line is not sewerable and therefore not considered for sewer expansion in the future. Everything within the line is up for grabs, potentially for sewer. And also the map does satisfy a third requirement, which is to specifically outline the collection system, which it does in green. So we can do all of that with just the one map, and the other two can just be eliminated. Basically that's it. I think the maps, as I just described, should stay in. And the track changes identify the comments that were made by the commission. And I'd just like to pass it on to planning director for next week, unless there are any comments.
I have a comment.
Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
I have a serious problem putting well locations on a map. There's too many crackpots around here.
Well, I mean, these maps have been out there for a long time. I really don't think it's that much of a concern, but if the commission does in general feel that way about it, we can have that comment be passed forward and just show this map with the drainage basins on it and with the stratified drift aquifer on it.
There's no need for anybody to know where the wells are, unless you have some crackpots that want to put something in them. That's a security breach of the highest caliber. And this issue's been brought up before.
Is it, Carol Russell, is it possible to have the maps go to the appropriate people at the state level, but have protection in terms of what would be shared with the
No, it's
general
public
public?
If we put this out there, it's public information, it's accessible to the public for a whole 10 years. And it's not something that gets edited and redacted along the way. This is a published report that people around the country, around the world can access.
What we could do, I guess what we could do is if you, when you see well 5, well 1A, you see how it's sort of pinpointed. Now, maybe this map could be even generalized further. And maybe what you do is put a big circle, okay, that says, okay, we generally have a water supply within this drainage basin. We have 2 or 3 in this drainage basin. I guess what we're trying to, what POCD would like to do is be able to have some way of showing an area that should be protected. And the mapping with the wells on it does that. But we could pull the pinpointing of these wells off, and perhaps Gary with GIS could generalize that even further if that is the wish of the commission.
I have a, Brad?
Yes.
Could it be that it's wellhead areas as opposed to, you know, the like what we have our aquifer protection is the well, you know, and just generally call it the wellhead areas or something? Just an idea.
Well, now what you're referring to is actually overlaying the level A map on this, which
I think
identifies the influence of the well. Otherwise,
I think
the
I would
wellhead
go
area
more.
is a 200-foot. Wellhead is a 200-foot protective radius around the well. So that's basically what you're seeing there now.
They're giving it away anyway. Yeah.
Why don't you just go with what your idea is? I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, the circle, yeah.
Maybe not even labeled. Maybe so nobody knows what we call well 5. I mean, just a little circle, maybe the size of a dime or something, same color, maybe smaller than a dime because that would start taking up some space. But just in general.
Yeah, I wouldn't even identify the well. That's probably a good way to go. Don't even identify the wells, the labels on there, but just generic large circles and then with an arrow indicating water supply source or something.
Supply areas. I think Joe's point is well made, and I've heard that argument before over the years. And again, this is a published report that I agree. There's a lot of crackpots out there. I don't know that we need to give them a roadmap right to the to the source. You know, and the other side of that argument is if they want to find it, they'll find it. But again, no sense drawing them a map to help them get there. So I think that's a good compromise. I think we found a middle ground there is show the area, maybe not label, and still with an eye toward the conservation and protection of our wells, which is so important. So good comments.
I've got a further question for Brad on the water meter report there. That map is dated April of 2018. Are we going to try to upgrade that?
No. I think it's substantially correct. You know, if the only thing I guess I would suggest there is if I don't even know how Gary developed this data, but this is a map that came from, I'm not sure even where this map came from because it's not in our water supply plan. So I don't know how he actually developed the data. It looks right. And if he can update it, maybe we should have him do it.
I was just looking like the orchards is just a big blank up there, and we've got a heck of a lot of wells up in that area. You know, you can see Heritage has got, you know, a scatter of them, but then you see down where the orchards is, and it's just like open. So that's all.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good point. Yeah, I do see where Orchards here is not really filled in that well. Only, yeah, and that's Heritage to the right of that.
Even that is kind of a little bit scant, but I mean.
Well, let me do this. Let me do this. When I submit this to Gary, let me make a point I mean, you know, is it? Do you even want to have a map out there that's sort of you know, half put together? Maybe we don't. But let me see if Gary can update this, and if so, you know, we'll keep it in. But I'll make a note to Gary that we feel that this map is a little bit outdated. I guess that's a good point. I thought it was you know, reasonably recent enough to give everyone the idea, but
Why is it necessary in the first place?
well, I mean, that's also a question too. Statutorily, I don't know if it actually needs to be in there. So we could,
Once again,
I could talk to Gary about whether that he needs something like that in there or not.
the word is security. Let's not make it easy for terrorists.
Well, but again, the point is we're trying. If you were to look at we have a water distribution map that has every pump station, every water main, every tank.
Take it out.
No, not in here. In our own files, it's in our water supply plan. I mean, that's not what we're showing here. This is just a very general way of showing geographically, and I think it's kind of useful to show what's the percentage of East Lyme that's got water and what part doesn't. So I think that's what they're trying to convey in the PLCP, without being specific.
Who needs to know it other than us?
Well, this is the plan of conservation. It's to sort of identify our resources and our infrastructure in a general way, so we can plan for the future. At least that's the planning side of it. You know, I mean, if that's also a problem, I will just ask Gary to consider taking that out if he doesn't need it in there.
Okay, any other comments?
All right.
I have,
I've got one question. The last map, the one on the sewer, I think it needs a title. If there's a title in the lower right-hand corner,
Yeah.
then I can't read that, but, you know,
Yes,
if you leave it at this scale, a lot of people aren't going to be able to read it.
that's correct.
Maybe you ought to put a better title near the top.
That's a good catch, Dave. We'll add that.
Carol Russell, I have a comment. Regarding recommendation number 6 in the recommendation section, where the language says further measures should be considered such as, and then it lists A, B, C, and D. Would it be better to say further measures may warrant consideration? Because I think depending on what's going on might determine which of those might be pursued at any given point. You know, where it says should be considered, it sounds like we absolutely are going to be looking at all of those right now, whereas if you say may warrant consideration, by having the term warrant in there, it, you know, depends on circumstances on the ground, so to speak, which one of those or multiple ones of those would be like priority for consideration at a given point. That's just a comment.
I'm kind of fine with that.
Yeah.
Further measures may
May warrant consideration. and then such as, and then the A, B, C, and D. And
Okay.
And in that same section on number A, a moratorium on service lines to new residential developments. Instead of limiting that to new residential developments, should we add on about or other projects with the potential for moderate to high volume sewage capacity requirements? In other words, if we're at the point where we're seriously looking at a moratorium, I would say that that would probably be some very serious point. It would be the amount of capacity involved with a new project that, in other words, if you're doing a moratorium, if you have a new project that's residential and you say a moratorium on that, but then there's another big project that's not residential, but it's going to require, you know, a design capacity that maybe I'm overthinking it, but it seemed like we're zeroing in on residential and not zeroing in on the issue would be if it's a new project that's going to require a lot of capacity at that point. I thought that was I mean, it's assumed that if it's a new residential development that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of capacity involved, but there could be other projects that are not residential or that maybe would have a high, I don't know. It just seemed like we were narrowing it to residential, and maybe that's not, maybe it should be a little broader. And again, it's just for consideration, and you know, who knows at a time when we're dealing with that, but I just, it seemed not to just
Well, if residential's the concern, you could just take the word residential out and say a moratorium on service lines to new developments. And that could cover anything and everything.
Okay, do we need to talk about, you know, requiring with the potential for moderate to high volume sewage capacity requirements, or is that?
Well, we almost identify that in the first paragraph where we say, well, new applicants for sewer connections over 20 units for 5,000 gallons must apply for allocation of capacity as, you know, something we're already doing.
Yeah,
these
maybe.
other items could come into play. So
I'm comfortable with that. If I don't know what anybody else thinks, but just then take residential out and just say to new developments. That's, yeah, that probably is fine.
that way it doesn't single them out.
Sure.
You need
All
the
right.
motion, Brad?
So let me just make sure I understand the water resource map. Will take the well labeling off. We'll make bigger generic circles in those areas to just sort of generally identify water supply, and we'll talk about removing that meter map, and we will add a title to the sewer shed map. So basically, looking at basically two maps here. Now, if Gary says that there should be something like that meter distribution map in there, I'll send everyone an email so you all have a heads up on that and what we might come up with for that. But you know, maybe we could just pull it right out.
Okay.
Carol, Russell, I have one more question. Right at the beginning of the document, the key facts that you have outlined, are you planning to put those in?
I was not. She said they were not necessary, not required, but helpful.
I agree with what you're deciding.
Yeah, because we have, you know, we haven't even discussed in a while our spreadsheets associated with this moving target of available capacity and all that. I prefer not to put that in there, to be honest.
And customers can be tricky too, because, for example, the state of Connecticut is the customer, but how many people are actually, you know, so are you looking at customers? Are you looking at people served?
Yeah,
it
that one's
gets,
probably, but that one is probably a little easier to do because we just take that right off our billing records. I could easily, you know,
So,
I
we-
can
they don't need
generally.
it. It's not necessary, and I don't think at this time
Yeah,
in
I
the town's
agree.
history with
Okay.
what we're battling, that it's necessary. We're better
Okay,
off
well,
not.
that's good.
you
All
know.
right, well. I
And
guess-
that's a number that's dated as soon as the report is published,
Mm,
right? Because
Good
some
point.
other test gets built or some other gallon gets used. So, you know, if someone needs an up-to-date number, they're gonna call downstairs and get an accurate number.
Mm.
Is there any other comments on this report? We don't want to belabor this.
Here.
It's just a guide.
Hello,
Yeah,
open space is great, but every open space comes off the tax rolls. And number two, when you start looking at what we have here for large tracts of land for development, we don't have very much of it left.
so what's your point, Joe? Is there a particular place on the, where does it say open space here?
This here, they want to support for development of East Lyme groundwater protection plan through open space.
Right.
Piece of property you take off is not on the tax rolls. And if you
Yeah.
look how much large tracts of land are left in this town for development, aren't very many of them left.
I agree, but you know, remember who the author is here, and you know, the purpose of this is conservation, and really it isn't development; it's conservation. They do very little talk in the packet of information. There's very little talk about development of the town. It's all about conservation and open space and agricultural and aquacultural. It's just what it is. It's the very nature of the authors and the audience. And part of the process. So, I understand your point though, Joe. Any other comments on this? If not, we can move on. Water project updates. Is that a Ben? Or is it Brad?
Well, yeah, I'll take the first one. Just a little bit of an update on the meter replacement project. We've been, you know, inching along with trying to still get our hands around all this. And we did have Attorney Zamarka take it one step further. And we had him review the statutes, and particularly the statute associated with the exemption to the license requirement for municipalities. It's Connecticut General Statute 20-340. We thought that that a municipality, by hiring, a municipality is exempt from the licensing requirement for putting in a meter. So we took it one step further, and another town actually took the same logic. That's why we attempted to drill down with it. And if the municipality hires a contractor, is that contractor an employee or an agent working on behalf of the town? Yes, but not in the sense of actually under the employment of the town. Mark Zamarka kind of put a big hole in the whole thing. He went back and he researched an appellate court decision in 1987 where the very same argument was being made, where a municipality, I believe it was Danbury, hired a contractor and they wanted to absolve them from meeting the licensing requirements. But the appellate court decided that they couldn't do that. Because when you think about it, then the whole licensing requirement could be undermined. You know, if you just pass on that exemption to a subcontractor. So now there is another town in western end of the state that had a legal opinion. I spoke with the general manager of this particular water company, who's in the process of going through a water meter replacement project, but hasn't gotten far as we have. They're in the spec development stage. they say that they are going to move forward with their project based on their attorney's evaluation of this, in that they're saying that the subcontractor is working as an agent of the municipality and therefore is exempt from the, from the licensing requirement. However, Mark Zamarka, our attorney, does not feel that way and does seem to have some strong case law that would suggest otherwise. So we feel that that kind of ends that, at least at this point. We've also had some conversations with Paul Formica, Senator Formica, who has been working with the governor's office. We spoke with Mr. Formica last week, Joe, Bill Scheer, and myself, and Ben. And he is actually working on hopefully a short-term resolution to this, knowing that a more longer-term resolution is a legislative action and change, which won't come very soon. We are guiding Mr. Formica with providing him with some bullet points and some arguments that he can then share with the higher ups at the governor's office to see if we can get this off the dime. And ultimately, we're requesting that DCP allow us to move forward like they have done in the past to another very large water company in the state of Connecticut, to allow a project to go forward with a licensed plumber on staff employed by the contractor who supervises and oversees the installations. That's what we're looking for. And that's what we're trying to pitch to the governor's office.
Thank you for that update.
Okay.
More to come. More to come. Thank you. Well, 1A, 6 treatment plant.
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. We just finished the installation of all the main work that we had talked about during the last commission meeting. 2 insertion valves were put in on either side of the area. We were able to keep the school online while we did all the work that we needed to do inside the well 1A vicinity. So we actually just took bacterial samples this morning. So we're hoping to get those back by the end of the week and we can put that online. We've been working with the state to allow us a treatment modification through the well 1 building and feed the well 1 treatment building with well 6. So as you know, we finished the construction of the main through that area, and now to kind of work as a stopgap, we would like to run well 6 through well 1 and give us some more flexibility, and that could allow us to run well 1 or well 6. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and things are going well there. We just received both generators. They were set, I think it was last Wednesday, and the block for the walls just arrived today for the addition on well 6. So everything going really well over there. No issues to really report.
Great. Any questions? Quick questions? Replacement of well 5.
Okay, well, as Joe Bergot was talking earlier in the meeting about having potentially some money available to move forward with the tank paint project. No sooner talks about that, I'm throwing out another potential great project for us. We've come quite a ways here now with being able to formulate a budget. And, we'll have to talk more on how we can move forward. This is also another very important project. Well 5 has lost substantial capacity over the years. We've surged it and we cannot get the capacity back. We're down to about 120 gallons a minute. And we've done the testing out there earlier this summer. You've heard me report on that. We have the potential of up to 550,000 gallons. There you go, back to the 550,000. 550 gallons per minute, which is great. We then have had SB Church at least get a preliminary budget together for us. we, all said and done, if we were to put in a new well, a submersible well, a gravel packed well, a 24 by 18 gravel packed well with a pitless adapter and a submersible well pump, and then we were to do site work, piping, conduit, electrical, mechanical, some controls, SCADA, chemical feed upgrades, and filter rehab, we're talking with a 15% contingency of about $604,000. You know, depending on how we roll this out, we could probably keep some of that stuff off the project and phase it in a little later. But at the very least, you're probably in the $300,000 range. So this is a project that we need to kind of set our sights on. It's in north of I-95. It has great water quality. It does have iron, which is controlled by our filtration system out there, but very low sodium levels because it is not subject to, you know, things that do impact sodium. So it is, and we do have a diversion permit for it to pump well over what we're pumping. So it is low-hanging fruit. It's just going to cost some money to try to get there. And in the next month or so, I will be putting a capital budget together so you can see this project in relation to everything. So you can kind of have a better understanding of the roadmap. I think as I consider, you know, leaving, I should leave behind an update of our capital project plan for Ben to refer to and for the commission to refer to, and see what the future roadmap is. But this is something to keep an eye on if we can find a way to afford it at some point.
Can we
That's it.
bond it?
It could be bonded, yes.
Any other questions? Our staff is busy. Correspondence log is in your packet. I don't think there's anything there to talk about. You can review that. Chairman's report, nothing to report on my end. Staff updates, water department, sewer department, monthly reports. They're in your packet. Are there any questions?
Am I mistaken? I thought we were going to have a report on the tri-town agreement at today's meeting.
Yeah, the last meeting got canceled. So since the last meeting, we thought we'd have an update. We have not met as chairman and top utility guys in each town have been meeting, not as a committee, not as anything more than it's more of a preliminary, you know, kind of a, they're going out there, they're there to check. What we're doing is trying to find the sticky points, the friction points, and seeing if we can work that out. We'll bring that back to the subcommittees and then obviously to the full committee. But we haven't met, and there was some legal issues with a member of the public who wished to sit in on a discussion that would be inappropriate for them to sit in on, as it's just utility directors meeting, not to negotiate, but to find out where, you know, the common ground is and where things that need to be negotiated by the subcommittee. So, yeah, you're not getting a committee report tonight. There's nothing to report.
I can't guess who that Slovenian that wanted to sit in was.
Yeah, we're struggling through that. Again, if I meet with, let's you know, back up. If I meet with Joe and Brad as a first line or as the chair with two members of department heads, that doesn't need to be a public meeting. Doesn't mean the public gets to sit in on every discussion I have with a department head. The same goes true if I go knock on the door over at in Waterford and sit down with Rob Brule, the first selectman, or Mike Passero, the mayor, or Barry Weiner, the chairman of the Water and Sewer Commission over there. That's not a public meeting. A public meeting would be subcommittees and committees who are authorized to make decisions. We're simply having discussions. So that is our argument. That's our stand, and we're sticking to it. And And that's where we're at. So good observation, Dave. Thanks for prompting me to have that discussion with you.
Mark?
Yes,
Carol
Carol?
Russell? Has there been any further discussion among the Tri-Town discussions about extending the current agreement because of the pandemic and having a longer negotiation period?
We are in agreement, although it's not up to us. I think we'd have to bring that back to each individual water and sewer commission, or sewer commission in this case, that we would probably extend the current agreement to another 6 months because of COVID, because of pandemic, and because there's we want to do it right and we don't want to rush through things. And it's been slow to develop. But yes, there's a general understanding at the table that on December 31st we're going to have to go fit our pipes somewhere else and send our things somewhere else, which is obviously a ridiculous notion anyway. But we are all in agreement that we are trying to work as one team, as a partnership, to try to make this work out. So yes, it will be extended for 6 months. We don't think it will take that long.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Got a comment.
Yes.
Those meetings are not public, but just keep in mind that emails are.
Yes, that is a good point, Joe. We've stayed off of emails other than to arrange our meetings. But absolutely, Joe. And I've learned over the years, and you should too, all, if you're texting one another or emailing one another, it is a conversation that is public. So picking up the phone and calling someone is a lot easier and doesn't leave a paper trail. And again, not that we're trying to hide anything, but there's just a legal thing where you have an obligation once you put it in writing. But there's nothing to hide either. So we are on the Water and Sewer Department monthly reports. Dave, do you have any questions on those?
I've got just a couple questions. On the water report, Brad or Ben, we're still taking water from New London?
Yes, we are, in great guns too.
Okay.
You need to understand that both well 1A and 6 are offline right now for the water upgrade project. We're working with the state to try to get well 6 back on and running with the treatment modification. But until then, we are, taking quite a bit of water from New London. 5 million last month. I think we're up to, if you look at the water report, we're like a 14.9. The treatment upgrade project is going to be another couple of months at least going, with that being out of commission. So, Joe Bergaw expressed some concerns about, the water budget as we go through the year, and this is going to be one of the things that will, impact us. We did try to account for it. We were somewhat aware of what we were going to be up against, but we'll have some challenges with that.
Budgeted to take about 25 million.
Yeah. So, the 24 million, we were 14.9 now, let's say 15. So, a couple of months.
4 months at our present rate.
Yeah. We'll probably be over, all said and done, and probably not be sending water until January sometime.
Are we going to try to make up and do that, or are we just going to send what we can?
I think we're going to send what we can. And maybe we need to have we'll have to have a conversation with New London on that. They don't seem to be too particular about it, and the state has not been really that particular about it, but it's hopefully we'll get some relaxation on that.
I have a question regarding the concerns about musty smell and taste to the water that you've been getting that's reported. Is that within any particular neighborhoods, or is that town-wide or system-wide, or what?
It's not town-wide, but generally more prevalent in the Giant's Neck area, in certain areas of Giant Neck, and certain areas of Black Point.
Any theories as to?
Yeah, we have lots of theories. I mean, we've done all kinds of testing, and we've even consulted with our laboratory, environmental consulting laboratories, and they suggested some things, bacteriological sampling that we could do that are not related to compliance, but for example, heterotrophic plate counts, which is just a general bacterial evaluation of water quality, which can sometimes be an underlying indicator of taste and odor, aesthetic concerns. Also, iron bacteria is another one. So a couple of the areas where complainants, where it's been relatively persistent, we've sampled for both of those things, HPC and iron bacteria, as well as in the raw water sources, and we're no problem at all. I mean, the guidelines suggest that an HPC count of, you want to be below 500 for good general water quality. We were getting non-detect to less than 2 coming out of out of the wells, out of the raw water, and also out of distribution at someone's tap, even though the water does have a very disagreeable odor and smell. And of course, we've done all kinds of SOCs, IOCs, VOCs, metals, all of that in all of our routine bacteriological testing. Nothing is giving us any indication. However, the one theory we do have is that we did more of an aggressive flushing of the mains, and Ben can probably jump in on this as well, but by doing a more aggressive flushing of the mains, especially with your older cast iron mains, this is not proven, this is somewhat speculation at this point because we're kind of running out of ideas, that by doing a higher rate flushing with the new equipment we have, we've sort of peeled the Band-Aid off, or the scab of tuberculation that may have accumulated in the inside of old cast iron piping over many years. And now that chlorine is reacting with that. And that could be old iron and manganese deposits in the piping that are now sort of emanating the odor and musty type odors that will, frankly, this may just take some considerable amount of time, repeated flushing at high rates. It might even lead to a point where we may have to consider main replacement on some of the older mains. So I don't know where this is going, but I do know that nothing is pointing to any public health threat. It's just more of an aesthetic thing that I would like to get to the bottom of sooner than later here. And we'll be working with the lab some more to see if we can nail things down more.
What's the period of time now that this has been going on?
I would say we started noticing this in February.
Huh.
I was just gonna say too that when this well project's finished, we'll finally have the ability to really do a thorough flush of the entire system. As we were just talking about, we're taking water, a lot of water from New London just to meet our demand right now, and normally we would be able to do some flushing at this time too, and we just don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Our hands are a bit tied right now, and I have been indicating to some of the customers that as soon as we have that opportunity, we'll get back out into flushing. But to be honest, I'm not sure we're going to be able to really have a rigorous fall flushing program because we're kind of hurting with well 1A offline and well 6 offline at the moment, and taking the water from New London. So that's a good point. That's not helping matters.
Extremely low right now.
Let's wrap up, I think. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, I just had 2 questions quickly for Brad on sewer. What's is there any theory behind the very low, or we're below average on like every month, and some of them are quite a sizable below average. You know, we get some 11%, 15%,
Well,
29.
yeah. I mean, if you're referring to a couple of things that are low. Number one is the DOC sewer flow is probably the lowest I've seen. It's below 100,000. I don't think I recall ever seeing that, but that probably is explainable with perhaps a reduction in population and perhaps COVID related. And of course, Gates Prison is completely shut down with zero flow. Okay. Now, the perplexing number to us at the moment is the average, daily average. That's also a number that I don't recall seeing a number that low in many years. The 632,562, that number. So we're going to watch that too. That just seems abnormally low to me too.
Yeah, I was just looking at that, and then the only other comment I had on the sewer report is these pages on the back. They've got a heading on it, and the headings can be put at the top of each chart, because when you get into the second page and the third page, you have no headings and what you're looking at.
Yeah, I can take care of that. Yeah, I know that does make it difficult to read.
Yeah, it's just setting up on your thing. Yeah.
Yep.
That's it for me.
I just have a question, kind of a follow-up on the sewer flow discussion. To what degree that we've had drought-like weather, and does this mean that infiltration is very, very low because of drought, and could some of this be connected with that?
To some degree, but I mean, even we've had dry years before, and I'm not sure I've ever seen something below 700,000. But again, this is a dry year with COVID, so maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe the combination.
Yeah, it's really hard to say.
I got one question for Joe. Hey, you're gonna up the fees for tie-in and put locks on the you're gonna have so you can lock up the curb boxes, right?
That's what we like to do. Yeah.
Nobody, by code, nobody's supposed to be. I mean, I know everybody's got a curb key, but nobody should be touching our curb boxes without permission from the water department.
They're doing it all the time. They're doing it all the time.
Yeah, but it's against the law. It's actually against, without permission. Now, technically, I can call you and say, hey, can I turn the water on? And if you don't have somebody available, you can give me permission to turn the water on. But the responsibility, if I break that curb box, is my responsibility, right? Nobody's supposed to be touching our equipment. Now, if we're short-staffed and you want to give guy permission to turn the curb box on, you really even shouldn't do that. But I mean, guys shouldn't be turning our water on and off. That curb box belongs to the water department.
Dave, everything you're saying, we agree with, but it's happening. So
but those locking curb boxes 10 years from now we're gonna be digging them up at our expense, because they work once the first day you put them in, and then after they get frozen and sand and crap in them, they don't work again.
Dave, we're not saying that's absolutely what we're going to do. What we're trying to do is address some issues. The bumping the fee from 2,500 to 3,000 is definitely substantiated even without that, because of the cost it is, especially of the pavement, of restoring the pavement and stuff like that. So it was an idea that we're looking into. We're aware that this is happening, and we found it in a few times where we kind of caught it. And then that's my thing. You're stealing water. You can't do that. So we're just trying to protect our interests because that's billable water that's not being billed.
I think you're better off making it clear to the contractors and maybe have a fine assessed to somebody turning a curb box on without permission.
That would be great as well to have some I mean, I don't know if there's even, I don't think there is a fine. Maybe there's a $5 fine. It's whatever it is has to be significant that they're not going to do it.
No, I mean like a $250 fine if you operate the curb box without written permission or permission from the staff member or Ben, Brad, or you, one of 3 people. And then, I mean, I just don't think the curb boxes are a good idea because they don't work for very long. And then you're going to send guys out there 5 years from now to turn the water off, and you're not going to be able to turn the water off because it's stuck.
We'll look into it, Dave. We're going to do what's right
Okay.
for the commission. All right.
All right.
Okay,
Steve,
are we ready?
We got future agenda items. I don't know if anybody's got anything.
Anything? If not, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mingo
I'll
and
second that.
Bond. I get Mingo and Bond, so let's go with that tonight. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming, for a good meeting, for your service for the town, and see you next time.